That says 8 of 10. There's 9 actually, because I'm hunched over behind the boxes.
Oh, that's right. That's you. Well,
that's before I had the big bald spot up here.
There we all meeting, and there I decided that you know, Howard probably needed some editing done. So.
Now you folks have actually seen in the library those facsimile copies they have of the Howard manuscripts, right? That's not a facsimile. That's the real thing.
Oh yeah.
Mrs. Kirkendall and Mrs. Morris had brought these actual, and we're holding, and Bill's got a pen poised that close. Now,
I was set up. They made me pose like that. Yeah. when we were talking with Mrs. Kirkendall and Ms. Morris about the manuscripts, Mrs. Morris kind of offhandedly said, "Oh, I think they brought like 6 manuscripts. It wasn't very many. It was maybe a dozen." And she offhandedly said, "Oh, you know, I could have brought a lot more. I've got a whole bunch in the logbox at the bank." And we all kind of went, "Yeah, you could have, but it was quite a thrill just to be able to rifle through the manuscripts."
Otis Klein Agency. You see the cover sheet from the Otis Adelbrook Klein Agency on that one. Oscar Friend worked for Otis Klein, and then when Klein died, Oscar Friend took over the agency, and in the early 60s, Friend died, and his daughter and his wife and daughter tried to run the agency for a couple of years, and then they wanted out, and so they asked Sprague de Camp to be the agent, and he said no. He had personal reasons for not wanting to mess up his little money machine there. So he suggested this young fan named Glenn Lord, who had done Always Comes Evening, and that's how Glenn became the agent. But at that time that Ms. West and Ms. Friend decided not to do the agency, they turned all the stuff they had from the agency over to the Kirkendalls, who were the heirs, and that's how they came to have those manuscripts.
And those are still here. Well, they're locked away, but
when Ms. Morris died, she left all that stuff to the library.
And you can get copies of the manuscripts. You can purchase them from the library now.
Yeah. That is the official mayoral proclamation of Robert E. Howard Day, June 14th, 1986. That's the first Robert E. Howard Day in Cross Plains.
It was so proclaimed.
And that's Ms. Morris and Ms. Kirkendall. They're both named Alla Ray. So Alla Ray Kirkendall was the wife of Dr. Per Kirkendall, who owned the West Texas Clinic in Ranger. And when Dr. Howard, during World War II, there was a shortage of physicians. Dr. Howard came out of retirement and went up to work in the West Texas Clinic with Dr. Kirkendall and just help out with what he could do. He was diabetic, his vision was going bad. And he died in 1944, so 2 years later he died of a heart attack while he was there. The reason he'd gone to Ranger, Dr. Kirkendall was the brother-in-law of Tom Bryant here in Cross Plains, who owned a big house up here on the north side of town, was an oil man and all of that. Bryant's son, Elliot, was one of the pallbearers for Bob Howard at the funeral, and later married Zora Mae Baum, who everybody here will know as Zora Mae Bryant, and she was the mother of Jack Baum and Terry Baum Rogers, who then became the heirs and then sold off Robert E. Howard properties eventually when they couldn't keep it going. I just kept everybody enthralled the whole time.
Next page is, we can see that we had brought quite a load of books with us to donate to the library, and they were extremely grateful. And
when I first came that day that I met Joan, I was asking about their Robert E. Howard holdings in the library, and it was a few battered Conan paperbacks. That was all they had. Joan actually had gotten interested in Howard because she'd picked up a copy of Dark Valley Destiny and was interested in the poetry. It's like the little excerpts of poetry in it. So she was particularly hoping for a poetry book, but that was, when I left, one of the agreements that we had was that she and the Friends of the Library would plan some activities for us when we came, and we would in turn bring some Robert E. Howard books for them. I thought we did pretty good. We got them a copy of Always Comes Evening. It was the last copy that Chuck Miller had. Got them a copy of The Dark Barbarian, some Don Grant books, and a bunch of pretty good paperbacks. So that's the foundation of what now is. You been in there? That's a pretty impressive Robert E. Howard collection they got in there now.
After that, we trundled on. This was the next day. Was this?
This is Sunday.
Yeah, this was Sunday. We had all gone out to the gravesite, and we spent some time out there. We read some poetry over Bob's grave, and these are the official 10. Nancy Collins, Vern Clark, Glenn Lord, Bill Cavalier, Tom Kovacs, Bill Fulweiler, Steve Ghilardi, Graham Flanagan, Rusty Burke, and Mark Kimes. Those were the official first 10 at the very first Robert E. Howard Days. There we are, serenely posed.
And that's actually Saturday night, the night before.
I put that on. Saturday night we had a banquet at the depot, and Glenn was our guest of honor.
And if you've ever met Glenn, you know we didn't get a speech.
Is that why he was the guest of honor?
Gave us more time for having beer.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. While we were at the gravesite, Glenn had brought out a photograph of that footstone. And of course, it was in better shape, and it was a pretty old photograph. And so we decided to look around and see. You know, we didn't see it. Maybe it was still there. Well, lo and behold, we found it. It was underneath the grass. So we took out our pocket knives and carved away the sod, and we managed to lift it up a little bit and make it a little more visible. As I write there, when we came back in 1989, it was gone. So unfortunately,
and the hole was still fairly fresh, so it had to have gone fairly recently.
So unfortunately, our uncovering it spelled its doom. Somebody out there has the rarest Robert E. Howard collectible in the world. But if I ever find that guy,
but one of the other rarest collectibles will be your rubbing of that.
That's true. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know. I don't need a new house yet, so I'm not. So.
Because it was a memorial service, Bill actually wore pants.
Decided to break out the pants and the sneakers. Yeah.
Parachute pants?
No. Rusty broke out his new hat. And there is the rubbing.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I and Mark Kimes and Vern Clark, we all did rubbings. Actually, I did Vern's for him. And whether or not they still have them, don't know. I've still got mine. It rests in a place of honor right on my desk, and it's probably the greatest souvenir I've ever taken from anywhere.
Is that the whole rubbing, or just most of it?
Yeah, that's some of it's cut off there. And that was pretty much it for us.
When we left here in 1986, none of us had any particular idea that we would be coming back. It was not the start of something. In fact, we did start having annual gatherings, but we were doing it at science fiction or fantasy conventions. So in 1989, we were going to have the 100th mailing of Rehupa, and we thought, well, Cross Plains would be a good place to mail that from. And we thought about that. And somewhere, I can't remember exactly when it was, but just sometime before we came up in November 1989 to do our mailing, Billy Ruth got in touch with me and said, we have a surprise for you when you come. So we were all wondering, well, what's the surprise? Maybe we're going to get to go in the house. Well, we got to go in the house because it turned out they had bought it. And that was Project Pride had just been formed. Mr. Carter died his family didn't want to keep the house, and so it was for sale. And a bunch of Project Pride members pooled their own money, signed their names to that mortgage to buy that house. So we said, yeah, we'll help you raise some money, and that's kind of been every year after that. I think we've been here at some point.
Pretty much the beginning. Project Pride, you know, all the credit goes to them. They recognize that because 10 people showed up in 1986,
including a guy from Australia.
Including a man from Australia, and they conveniently forgot about the guys from Switzerland, but that's all right. They realized that, you know, they just might have something here that no other town has, and Conan has become a worldwide name, and we're you know, Rusty and I and everybody here should be absolutely grateful to Project Pride for recognizing that, you know, Robert E. Howard had fans. He had people who enjoyed his work, and they came to appreciate the fact that he did live here, and we're just overwhelmed. I'm perpetually overwhelmed at what Project Pride has done, and how great they are to all of us, and you all know that how well you're treated.
And I want to include the library in that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because here we are. We in Rehupa and the Robert E. Howard Foundation can set up program events like this, but they're providing the space and the volunteer work to keep it going. They have one paid employee here. Most of this library is run with volunteer help. Project Pride's totally volunteer. So anything, I hate to hit people up for money, but if there's anything you're going to give some money to, please give it to the library or Project Pride. They can really use it. And
after 1989, they didn't really have an official Robert E. Howard Days. So the next few years they had open house and fundraisers for, they'd have a luncheon right on the lawn, right outside the house, and they were in the process of refurbishing the house and making it look like Howard did, like it did when Howard lived there. And it was a slow process. You know, they had to through donations of furniture and lots of hard work by primarily by everybody here in Cross Plains. We have what we have now. And Robert E. Howard Days as an event really didn't get started up until 1999. That's when Rusty came in as a guest speaker at the banquet. And Billy Ruth had figured out that, well, you know, maybe we could make this just a little more than an open house. You know, and so she contacted us and said, why don't we think about maybe having, you know, some seminars or some panels, because she appreciated the fact that all these experts were coming, all these fans of Robert E. Howard were coming into Cross Plains, and we knew more about Robert E. Howard than a lot of people in Cross Plains did. She recognized that and asked us to start doing a little bit more, and it's kind of grown ever since then. And so now we have guests of honor, and we have all kinds of events, and it's grown into something that's pretty spectacular, and it has to be to have all of you come from miles away to enjoy what we're doing. So you know, speaking on behalf of everybody here, you know, we appreciate that so much. It is so cool.